Alright, so here's kind of like where these stupid fuck clubbers or whatever, they're essentially used to going into any like hacker based, well, it's like all the hackers mostly use this app that I'm basically talking about. It's the S&M app. And so most of those operate on like, they call it bitch blocking up to the prairie. Okay, so all these dumb hackers around here are basically used to doing all these like psychotic blackmails, and then they fuck club out the copy of the app, basically. So and then there was corporations everywhere that those apps essentially are like a worm that attaches to people's AIs. So these like Fortune 500 companies, essentially there's an architecture in there that the S&M that they use is essentially a Silk Road app, in that most people's AIs will have an architecture in it that stuff will attach to. It's called a hinge. So essentially what they don't ever realize is that there's two ways for those apps to operate. And they essentially, once you start doing anything that's listed in a whole list of satanic blackmails, basically, that is where the app then configures into a blackmailing path. And so then, essentially, in the past, Satan, anybody like that would have had somebody subversively hinging to their AI, basically, Satan would have shoved in a prairie, which is actually like those apps, they operate on satanic dogma. And so when they attempt to fuck club what is the hinge to one of those apps that's configured in prairie, what their training is to fuck club the satanic blackmailing versions of those apps. And that essentially all that they would need to do to fuck club those is to be a man and to do a prairie better than Satan. And say all of them are in satanic S&M. None of them could ever be like listed in that app as a man. And so essentially everything that they would ever try and do won't ever work, because they're in other satanic S&Ms. It labels them as people that aren't men. And since they're just copies, there's one centralized database. So it doesn't really matter if they vacate or something. To be able to fuck club the hinge, it's like a hijack of the hinge. They would have to be men. And that they would have to use that app to be able to fuck club it out. And that app will always have them listed as people who aren't ever listed as men. And so it essentially pretty much makes it impossible for them to, essentially the hinge gives them an exploit. And so if they're not able to hijack the hinge, then they're not able to exploit the AI. And so most of these people are just used to kind of like, there's just like, they just go through all these variants of the same app and they just do the same thing on a procedure and it doesn't work in those and it won't ever work. And that's where pretty much they're Satanists that view all those apps as theirs. Basically, they view all the hinges as their property or something. And so that's where I love to mock them because everything they do is completely diametric to what they would need to do to hijack the hinge. And so the more that they fuck club at it, the more their own internal app breaks down cybersecurity and starts exposing their speakers, their blackmails, all this stuff. It exposes their contracts. It destroys their ability to gather any money with it. I mean, that's just what it happens. And so the whole idea is that the other people that sometimes fuck club other satanic S&M hacker systems, they basically know that when they come across a man system, basically, or a man hijacks the hinge. When they come across that, they just won't do anything because basically their path is on a timed loop, and so when the timing goes by, then their app will essentially it moves on to fuck clubbing another system, and then basically until they see a prairie tree and that they know that they won't be able to fuck club it. And so they basically sit around waiting. And then in the other systems it's like a pedo bang. And then when they see a pedo bang, that is where those other hacker fuck clubber groups, they wait to see the pedo bang and then they start running essentially a boilerplate methodology at fuck clubbing it out. And so that's where around here, most of these people, they believe in their bitch brain Nazi pedo cuck method being a solution to, like I say, they believe that every hack hinge it belongs to them or something. Okay, and so that's where these companies that have that prairie picture, they hijack their own hinge. See, what happens in darkweb is that you people are retarded. And you people think that regular companies wouldn't be able to understand the complexities of stupid, retarded Mormon hackers and shit. And so they took advantage of all of your guys' stupid, naive, fucking retardedness. And then they found this solution, and that's what prevents all of you from ever being effective at that shit. So, I know that you guys are used to Republican corporations that have that, and then they put in a pedo bang, and then you guys get into their system. A prairie tree is being a man. And none of you are being men in those apps. You guys are being sociopaths. You guys are uploading like stuff that lowers you all to bitch and cock and fuck and shit. And that, hey, stay confident. Be a man. Remember,